All right, we're live. And let me pull it up. Hold on. All right. Why is my chat not working on OBS? I haven't streamed here in a while. I haven't used OBS on here. I'm trying to find out who's not going to strike. I was still in break. All right, let me pull you guys up over here. All right. No modded here. You know what it is? I don't have enough people that come here to do modding. I don't think I broke like 100 people in here. Global news. All right, let me try it. Yeah, it's still on, there's nothing showing yet. It's still showing the thing. Global news. All right, that's clips. Bear with me. All right, I'm not showing where they have it live, though. George Floyd. Damn, Toronto is 8 degrees right now. 8 degrees. Oh, it starts 10:30? Oh, come on. Now it's fucking with my ad blocker. All right. It's off. Allow. Allow. Toronto, Canada, 8 degrees. What's up, Rondaloo? Oh my god, I turned off my stupid ad blocker. Leave me alone, freaks. Alright, global news isn't showing anything yet, though. I'm not getting anything. It's showing me, like, highlights, but that's about it. It's not showing anything. We'll find out, Kim. We're gonna find out. Sky News. All right, let me try that. Sky News. The latest from the UK and around the world. Accept. Met police acted appropriately. Man who strangled and dismembered wife after row over frozen chips, jailed for life. Well, that's good. I love how Laura just wings it, don't I? It's the story of my life. Winging it. Who's Sarah Everhard? If you stream another person streaming it, will that person... It depends. Do you know what channel is streaming it if you wanted to stream from them? Yeah, but wouldn't they talk and stuff? Like, I talk sometimes. I'm sure I'll find it once it starts again. Come on. I don't have patience. Maybe that's why I wasn't a doctor. If I had patience, I'd be a doctor. Watch Sky News Live. It's not on until 10:30. What would you like me to do to entertain? You want me to dance? Should I get up and dance? Dance on my desk? Woohoo! Actually, Reagan, I think you should come up and strip. That's what I think. I saw my comments. So I want to tell you again. Thanks, love, MY. I'm glad. No, I didn't say it. I have you guys are on two different screens. You did not just say that joke. I did just say that joke. I gotta keep you guys entertained. Okay, heads up. The teen girls charged at murder for carjacking the Uber Eats driver. Both charged at murder. Girls are charged with felony murder and armed carjacking. Good. Those two chicks was sick. Everyone will... Oh, if you get up dancing. Sarah Everett is from London that disappeared and a police officer has been charged. Oh, okay. Which story, love, my Sarah or the girls? The girl one was sick. If that's what you're talking about, love, my, I'll show you the video. It was insane. Holy shit. When we first aired the story, they had $100,000 goal and they raised like 200 and change. He's almost at $1 million. They've now raised 953,000 in 5 days. Just shy of $1 million for his family. That's awesome. Cop raped her and dismembered. What a monster.
And good evening. First tonight to those new details from that deadly carjacking attempt at the hands of teenagers in D.C.'s New York neighborhood.
Now, we showed you this video of a car that was flipped over on its side earlier this evening. Now we know a man is dead and two teenage girls, not even old enough to legally drive, are in custody.
This scene unfolding just about a block from Nationals Park this afternoon, and that's where we find News 4's Shamari
I always
Stone
see
with
my
new
pandas,
information for us
Rhonda.
live
They are
tonight.
my happy place. Pandas are my happy place. Hold on, love, my, I'm pulling up the video.
Today, family gathered to honor the
Of course, all the news people cut it. I'm so happy they got almost $1 million for his family so far. That's awesome. He deserves it. Why is the video like disappeared? I don't want to see Fox's version. What was that? Come on. I can't win, let me tell you. Video. All right. Oh my God. I don't want Fox. You can't find the damn video anywhere. Everybody like cut it. That's crazy. It's like everybody cut the video. I mean, it was kind of crazy. See, once the media gets it, you're out. All right, I think we got it. Yeah, we got it. All right. Hang on. Fair warning. Hold on. Love My wanted to see his video real quick. Fair warning.
They're thieves.
What's going on?
Call the cops. They're trying to steal a car. This is my car. They steal a car? He said it's his car. Yeah, he is their car. No, this is my car. Shut it! Oh my God! Somebody just stole. She's stealing their car.
You're stealing the car?
Yeah, we called the cops. Call the cops. Call the cops. It's been called! It's been called! It's been called! It's been called! They stole the car! These girls stole the car!
Hey, come out!
Hey, they stole the car! They stole the car! These girls!
Who else will?
That's it! That's it! That's it! That's it!
Everybody's out. Everybody step back from the car. I'm gonna need everybody to step back from the car.
Please, my son is in there.
No. I need you to step back from the car. Everybody, I need you to step back from the scene. There's somebody
I saw what happened.
Oh, no. Step back. There's gas.
All right, I'm like talking to myself. I forgot I turned off. CNN has struck me before. They will strike me.
Did you see what the officers did? Well, let me back up a little bit. At some point, did you learn that there were more than those two officers at the scene?
That is correct.
When did you learn that?
Once the ambulance have arrived, I did notice that there was more than one officer, more than two officers on the scene.
And so where did you see, or how did you see these other officers?
Once they started to load Mr. Floyd onto the straddle to, not to know the technical name of it, but they put him onto the little bed thing.
The gurney or the stretcher?
The gurney, correct, yes, yeah.
And then when they did that, you saw these other officers?
Correct. That's right.
Where had they been, or where did they come from?
They were on the bottom side of Floyd, or trying to get his feet on to the gurney, and yeah.
Then you were able to see them?
Correct.
All right. And after Mr. Floyd was put into the ambulance and the ambulance left, did you stay at the scene for a little while?
That is correct.
Okay, so right after the ambulance left, did you see where the officers went?
That is correct.
Where did they go?
They proceeded to cut to the other side, front of the store, which is 38th, Chicago's this way. So they proceeded to go towards 38th and proceed to go away from the scene.
And were you still in that same emotional mindset?
Yes, I was very lost at the moment, and I was very nervous and not knowing what to do. And yes.
And did you, in fact, stay around at the scene for a little while?
Yes, I did.
Okay. At some point, did you make a 911 call?
That is correct. I did call the police on the police.
Right. And why did you do that?
Because I believe I witnessed a murder.
And so you felt a need to call the police?
And I felt the need to call the police on the police.
Now, there were police there, right?
There were police there.
Okay. Why didn't you just talk to them about it?
I believe that they didn't. We just didn't have no connection. You know, I spoke to them, but not on a connection of a human being relationship.
Did you, believe that they were involved?
Yes, totally.
And so when you made that 911 call, about how long after the ambulance left was that?
Time recollection? I don't know.
A matter of minutes?
Minutes, seconds. Not too long after they retreated to the other side of the street, I proceeded to call the police.
And prior to today, have you had an opportunity to listen to a recording of that 911 call?
Can you please repeat that question?
Prior to coming to court today, did we play for you a copy of that 911 call, a recording of it?
I will not say yes or no. I cannot remember at this moment.
Okay. If you heard that today, would you be able to recognize it as the 911 call that you made?
That is correct.
All right. We have now marked that as Exhibit 20, and Your Honor, we would ask that it be, we are offering it now as Exhibit 20.
And 20 is received.
All right. So if we can at this point then play Exhibit 20.
May 25, 2020.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Officer 987 killed a citizen in front of a Chicago store. He just pretty much just killed this guy that wasn't resisting arrest. He had his knee on the dude's neck the whole time, Officer 987. The man went, stopped breathing. He wasn't resisting arrest or nothing. He was already in handcuffs. They pretty much just killed that dude. I don't even know if he's dead for sure, but he was not responsible when the ambulance just came and got him. And the officer that was just out here left, the one that actually just murdered the kid in front of everybody on 38th in Chicago.
Okay. Would you like to speak with the sergeant?
Yeah, like that was bogus what they just did
Hold
to
on.
this man. He was unresponsive. He wasn't resisting arrest or any of it.
Okay, let me get you over to the desk. You can request to speak with the sergeant, okay? Stay on the
Yeah, and I'm sitting here talking to with another off-duty firefighter that just sat here and watched it in front of us as well.
Okay.
And she told him to check the man's pulse, but they wouldn't even check the pulse.
Okay, 1 second.
I have reached the city of Minneapolis to reach someone in our property crimes division.
Y'all murderers, bro. Y'all murderers. How you gonna kill yourself? I already know it. 2 more years. You gonna shoot yourself. Murderers, bro. Y'all niggas is murderers, bro. Minneapolis Third Precinct.
Hey, it's dispatch.
Yeah, man. So
Hold
I
on.
want to speak to a supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he wants to speak with the supervisor relating to 320's called Cup Food.
So they just killed that man in front of the store. The police.
2833-46, May 25, 2020.
Is that then an accurate recording of the call you made?
That is correct.
And at the beginning, you referred to Officer 987. Where did you get that number from?
Honestly, it was just visually popped in my head.
Okay.
Like, I looked at his badge, and that's what I read on his badge.
And so whose badge, which officer were you referring to?
The officer sitting over there.
Okay. And was that also the officer that had his knee on George Floyd's neck?
That is correct.
And for the record, when your previous answer, you were pointing to the defendant, Mr. Chauvin?
That's correct.
And so the purpose in making, what was the purpose in making that 911 call at that time?
I just felt like that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to do. But
And-
call.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
But call.
And the response then was to transfer you to a sergeant, correct?
That is correct.
And then at some point the call, it sounds like you're talking to Officer Tao. Do you recall if you were actually talking to Officer Tao at that point?
That is correct. Or was. Because I think at the moment, at the moment that I was making the call, he proceeded to like intimidate me and stick his camera in my face, his body cam. And
Okay. And the call sort of ends abruptly. Did you hang up and terminate the call?
I'm not 100% sure, but I may have, because I felt threatened once our interaction happened in front of the store with me and Tal.
And then from there, after hanging up, did you stick around for a while and talk to some other people there?
Yeah, I wanted to do my own investigation.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Mr. Nelson.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Can I ask what you're looking at?
Just notes, that's all.
Okay. I'm going to ask that you put those to the side, okay?
Cool, thanks.
All right. Thank you for your patience yesterday. Thank you for being here this morning. I just have some follow-up questions for you, all right?
Yep.
You testified yesterday that you started wrestling in the 7th grade. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And over time, you were talking about how you learn how to control your body weight, right?
That is correct.
And one of the things that you kind of talked about was when early in your instruction in wrestling, you call it, I think, flow wrestling.
That's correct.
And as I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, flow wrestling is kind of learning how to kind of keep your center of balance, learning how to, sometimes it may feel you should use your arm when you should really use your leg. kind of just learning how your body works, right?
Yeah, correct. Less resistance.
Less resistance. So sometimes less resistance is actually better in certain circumstances.
Repeat that.
Sure. I mean, if you're on the mat, right, and your instinct is to push your arm out to the side to try to use your body weight to roll, you may want to actually use your leg to roll the other way, right? Kind of like flow.
Kind of, but not really.
Okay, how would you describe just the flow of wrestling?
Flow is less. Flow is more, I'm flowing with you without using my strength. I'm flowing with you going 50, 60% of it. I'm flowing with you, letting you get into a half Nelson, and you feel the half Nelson, you're in it, and now you're flowing, your partner's letting you flow off your back and get into a position where you get into a stand up, into escape. Flow is where my partner's letting me get in on a double, and I'm letting him finish the double, and now I'm flowing into my offensive or my defensive position of getting away. So
Right.
different positioning.
Right, so you're learning how to use your body weight against the weight of the other person. You're learning how to just get in and out of moves, right?
Flowing.
Flowing, right. And that's something that you learned, at a young age in the sport of wrestling.
Correct.
And as you continued your wrestling career, you testified that you wrestled all the way through high school and then into college for a couple of years as well.
That is
right?
correct.
And you would agree that wrestling is a sport.
Wrestling's a lifestyle.
Okay. There are rules, there are points, there are referees. So there's a sport to wrestling, right?
Correct.
And I understand as a wrestler, it's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
But to the kind of the casual observer, maybe it's just a sport, right?
Correct.
All right. But you're learning how to keep your center of gravity lower and grapple with people.
Correct.
Right? And then you testified that after you kind of got out of college or finished your career in college, that you started moving more towards the mixed martial arts, right?
Correct.
And so you were training in jiu-jitsu, I believe you said?
That is correct.
All right. And again, jiu-jitsu is a form of martial arts, right?
Correct.
Lots of forms of martial arts, right?
Correct.
Judo, karate, Krav Maga, these are all various forms of martial arts that you have some general familiarity with, right?
Correct.
But your training is specifically in jiu-jitsu, correct?
No. I'm a martial artist. I train jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, stick fighting. Like, I'm a martial artist. I don't just train jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
I train boxing, wrestling, all is put into one. So as a fighter, you're not just working on the ground game. You're working on your stand-up. You're working, your Muay Thai, your kickboxing, things like that. That's what a martial artist is.
Okay. So you incorporate several forms of martial arts into what you study.
That is correct.
All right. And again, the notion of a chokehold is very common within the martial arts community, right?
That is correct.
Submissions. And there are many forms, right?
Correct.
Like the triangle or the rear naked chokehold, all sorts of different types of chokeholds or submission holds that apply.
That is correct.
All right. And again, I understand that martial arts is a lifestyle, but there is a sport to it as well, right?
That competitive side to it, yeah, sports.
Right.
Correct.
And I'm just talking generally, I'm not talking about the MMA fighting yet, but just even as a martial artist, there are competitions with rules and referees and things of that nature.
That
right?
is correct.
All right. And whether you wrestle or you compete in the or in the martial arts, there are weight classes, right?
That is correct. Well, yeah, that's correct. MMA has weight classes. Jiu-jitsu tournaments, there's open weights. So you win your weight division, you have a chance to wrestle in open division, which usually if I'm competing in just a tournament, I'll do an open division, which is open weight.
All right. So again, generally, like looking at your career as a wrestler, what weight did you wrestle at?
I wrestled anywhere from 106 to 141 in college.
Okay. And when you would competitively wrestle, you would wrestle with other people who were in that same weight class, right?
Correct.
And then in the martial arts, in the competitions for the martial arts, there are weight classes, but there's also this open weight class, right?
That's correct for jiu-jitsu.
In jiu-jitsu, and so you, as a 141-pound guy, may wrestle or may grapple with someone who's 180 pounds.
Or 220, 210.
Right, or 100.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, okay. But then about 10 years ago, you testified that you started with mixed martial arts.
Just repeat that, please.
I believe that you testified yesterday that about 10 years ago, you began training in mixed martial arts.
Correct, martial arts.
Yep.
Yeah, with like tennis.
MMA.
MMA, mixed martial arts. Yeah.
All right. And maybe I'm confused, like, of your progression? So you go from wrestling to boxing to mixed martial arts?
So I went from wrestling in college to training in a martial arts school,
Okay.
which covers martial arts.
Okay.
Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, mixed martial arts,
Okay.
wrestling.
And that's because there are some, I mean, again, there are some businesses or gyms that will train in a specific form of a martial art, right?
Correct. You have some that just do you have boxing gyms, you have jiu-jitsu gyms, you have Muay Thai gyms.
Or Krav Maga
or
whatever.
Yeah, whatever, anything, stuff like that. You know, you have different specialty of martial arts for different schools, but some schools, one of the schools I was at, the Academy under Greg Nelson, he taught a variety of martial arts. It was a martial arts school.
Okay. I'm understanding now that you went from the wrestling to the mixed martial arts, and about 10 years ago, was it that you started competing in a mixed martial arts?
I started competing right away. I went from wrestling in college to being one of the top amateur fighters in the Midwest to finish, just growing as a martial artist. So I started, at a different gym before I got to the academy. I was a wrestler. I didn't know anything but wrestling, at the time. So I'd take people down and ground and pound. And then I switched to gyms and under Greg, and I learned more jiu-jitsu. I learned more kicking. I learned different elbows. I learned, different martial arts techniques, chokes, submissions, arm bars, things like that, spinning back fists, flying knees. I learned that.
Right. Okay. When we talk about an MMA fight,
Correct.
right? All of those various methods of fighting are employed in those fights, right?
Correct.
So if I am a boxer and I'm in a boxing match, right? I can't kick you, for example.
No.
But if I'm in an MMA fight, I may punch you, I might kick you, I might choke you, short of biting, right?
Correct.
And the point of a mixed martial arts fight is to actually knock the person out, render him unconscious, right?
That is correct. Control the cage, things like that.
You referenced the cage match, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we kind of think about when we think about mixed martial arts fights.
You got cage fighting, which you see UFC, Bellator, LFA, all things like that, and then you have martial art tournaments where it's just strictly jiu-jitsu. You're in your gi. You have blue belts, black belts, white belts, purple belts. They all compete at a level. No striking, just all grappling. Then you have like the ones that are us in the cage. We do everything: punch, kick, all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I believe, according to your professional record, because you had an amateur career, and then you had a professional career, right?
Correct.
And you had 11 professional fights?
Possibly. I don't even know how many fights I technically had. So.
Yeah. Well, the internet exists, right?
Yeah.
Your statistics are saved.
Yeah.
All right. And so if I say that your professional record was 5 wins, 6 losses in 11 fights, would you disagree with that?
I think I might be 66.
Okay.
I think I'm actually 66.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you fight in an MMA fight, in these kind of open freestyle fights, you fight in a weight class, right?
Correct.
All right. People who are similar in terms of their weight, they may be taller, they may be shorter, but they're in the same weight class.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And again, I mean, there's a referee, right?
Correct.
And certain fights, when you get someone into a submission hold, the referee may come and lift up the person's arm to see if they're conscious or unconscious, right?
That's correct.
That's a way of determining whether or not
That's
the
if
fight
they're
is
not moving. I mean, if they're not, that's if they're not moving. If they're not fighting and stuff like that. Yeah, the referee has to. He has to. The person is conscious, so he might say keep moving. If they're not moving, he might check. You know, and sometimes the opponent will know that that person's out. So the opponent, if you look at the ref, like, look, he's out. Like he's out. You know,
Right.
things like that.
And sometimes you don't know that they're out, and that's why the ref comes and picks up the arm, right?
Most opponents know when they put their person out.
But it's possible, right? It's a yes or no question.
It's possible.
All right.
How about that?
As a part of your training in the mixed martial arts, you voluntarily submitted to being put into chokeholds, correct?
At practice.
At practice, right. And you also practiced these moves, right?
That's correct.
Rendering other people in practice unconscious.
That's
right?
correct.
And in your professional career, you were also, at times, have rendered people unconscious and been rendered unconscious yourself.
Correct.
Through one of these chokeholds.
Correct.
All right. Now, you described these chokeholds generally yesterday. These chokeholds, like you described an air choke and a blood choke.
Correct.
You remember your conversation about that yesterday?
Yes, correct.
All right. So when you use these forms of chokeholds, whether it's an air choke or a blood choke, they use those in various forms of martial arts, right? Like judo, Krav Maga. A chokehold is sort of across the board in terms of martial arts.
Correct.
With the exception of maybe the stick fighting, right?
Correct.
All right. And you testified that you, at your academy, you train with a lot of law enforcement officers, military people, and law enforcement from both state and federal levels, right?
That is correct.
And you said sometimes you don't even know that that's what they do, right?
That's correct, depending on what level.
And sometimes you get to know these guys because you're fighting with them, right?
Yeah.
You're training with them, and they tell you a little bit about their lives, right?
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, we just build a brotherhood of the gym. You know, some people interact outside with personal life. Some people just interact in the gyms, you know, and build a relationship. So I see you on an everyday basis. Like at work, I go in, I see you every day. I interact with you there. Then I'm going to interact with you outside of work, you know?
Right.
And then
Okay.
there's some that I interact with outside of
Okay.
the gym.
But I just want to make sure, you've never officially been invited to go to like the Minneapolis Police Academy to train law enforcement in the use of the force?
No.
Or the use of these chokeholds?
No.
And or any other police academy for that reason?
No, I witnessed my sensei, Greg Nelson.
I'm asking
training.
about you, sir. Have you ever officially been asked to train police officers specifically in the use of chokeholds?
No, just witnessed it.
Okay. Now, air chokes. You described air chokes yesterday. Air chokes are from the front, correct?
Correct.
And that's because what you're doing is you're actually cutting off the air
Correct.
to the trachea,
Correct.
right? So you can render someone unconscious by coming from the front of the neck and cutting off their airway, which renders them unconscious.
Repeat that.
Sure. An air choke is a front choke, agreed?
Yeah.
And what you're doing in an air choke is you're cutting off the air supply or the oxygen supply from the front of the neck, correct?
Correct.
And in doing so, you can render a person unconscious, correct?
On an air choke, I'm not a medical person, so I won't answer that.
Okay. On a blood choke, right, what you're doing is you're cutting off, and you described yesterday, the blood supply to the brain, right?
Okay. Side choke. Correct.
A side choke. And you described several different types of chokeholds, like the reverse or the rear naked chokehold, I think it's called, or the triangle. What you're doing is you're actually cutting off the blood supply to both sides of the neck in those.
Repeat that.
When you do a blood choke, what you're trained on generally is to limit the blood supply to both sides of the neck.
No, a blood choke is attack one side of the neck.
It's just one side of the neck. Okay?
The blood choke is attack the side of a neck. So my choke's from here, side of the neck.
Right, but you're using your weight and you're actually cutting off both sides. You're using your body and your arm, right? And you're actually protecting the trachea or the airway in the crux of your...
You're mixing chokes up. You're mixing your air chokes and your blood chokes together. Air choke is to attack the trachea. A side choke is to attack the side of the neck.
So if I have someone in a chokehold, right, and a blood chokehold using my arm, I may have my hand behind that person, right? No,
it's not. I'm attacking the side of the neck, not the trachea. You're attacking the trachea. I'm attacking the side choke.
I'm saying that the trachea is protected by the crux of the elbow. And so you're using the forearm and the bicep to cut off both sides of the blood.
Correct. From here to here. Right. You're cutting off one side of the neck on the choke.
Okay. How long does that usually take in your experience to render someone unconscious?
You go unconscious on a blood choke within seconds. Some people don't even know that they're about to go unconscious.
Right. You were interviewed by the FBI, right?
That is correct.
Right. I believe it was Agent Garvey of the FBI, right? Are you looking at some notes to refresh your recollection?
I have it in front of me. That's correct.
Would that help? Would that help you refresh your recollection?
I mean, yeah, that's why I just opened it up. Yeah. That's correct.
It's kind of weird. We have rules in court. You have to testify from your memory, not your notes. But if
it's not notes. I'm just the name is on the front of the page.
What I'm saying is, if you need to refer to your whatever it is you have in front of you to help you refresh your recollection, we need to get permission from the court to do that. So it's a weird procedure that we.
I don't know his name, so I'll look to see what his name was.
Okay.
Correct.
Would it help you remember his or her name if you looked at your paper in front of you?
That's correct, because it's in the paper.
Okay, Your Honor, may he refer his notes?
And Mr. Williams, refer to your notes silently.
Correct.
And once it's refreshed your memory, then close the notes back up and testify from your memory.
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
What was the name one more time, sir?
I believe there were two agents there, right? One was from the BCA named Angela Garvey.
That one's correct.
And then Eckert is the last name of the other?
I believe that, yep, that is correct.
Okay. And you were interviewed by those agents on May the 29th of last year, correct?
Correct, I believe so.
All right. You wouldn't, we have a transcript of that statement and the reports about it.
Yeah.
Would you dispute me if I told you it was May 29th?
I don't recollect the dates.
Okay, fair enough. And do you recall them asking you about blood chokes and how long it takes to choke someone out?
Correct.
And you told them 3 to 5 seconds?
Correct, just like I just told you, within seconds.
Right. And an MMA round is 3 minutes, right?
No, that's for amateurs. MMA round is 5-minute rounds.
Okay.
3 minutes for amateurs, 5 minutes for pros.
All right. So 3 to 5 minutes are per round of an MMA fight.
Of an MMA fight.
Right. Okay. Have you ever, whether it be in your training after you have rendered someone unconscious, where they come back to and they start fighting again?
Inside of a fight?
Mm-hmm.
Have I choked someone out and they came back to? No.
Okay.
Like, finish fighting, the referee will...
Have you seen that happen in practice?
Rephrase it, or please repeat the question.
I will do so. Well, you rendered someone unconscious, right? You're fighting with them, they've gone unconscious, you've released your chokehold from them. Have you ever experienced someone coming back and starting to fight you again right away?
Yes, and personally, no. Have I seen it? Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So you've seen after someone is unconscious, they come back to consciousness and they start fighting right away again. You've seen that happen.
I've seen it on the UFC multiple times where when someone gets choked out, they come back to and they continue to try to fight, and the referee has to explain to them that they've been unconscious. I've been knocked out, and I had to come back conscious, and the first thing I wanted to do was continue to fight. And then when I was in the locker room, they told me that the fight was already over, so I have no recollections of what happened in that moment.
Okay, great. Now, you testified that one of the things that you do and have done in your career is to work as a security guard, right?
That is correct.
And you've worked as a security guard in a variety of contexts, right?
That's correct.
So you've done some personal security for people.
Correct.
And you've done some like kind of doorman stuff, right?
That's correct.
Bouncing, I guess, is
Correct.
what you would call it. And you said that you have worked alongside the Minneapolis Police Department in those club type situations with off-duty officers and on-duty officers.
That is correct.
Okay. The in that capacity, have you ever had to deal with a crowd of people?
That is correct.
Have you ever had to deal with a crowd of people that was upset?
Definitely.
Is it easier or harder to deal with a crowd that is upset?
Each person's different. Me, I'm able to deal with the high capacity of distractions, different things going on, and still be able to be professional and focus on what's going on in front of me.
Okay. And have you ever been involved in a situation where there's a crowd that's upset and you were afraid of them?
Correct.
I'd like to direct your attention to the incident on May 25th of 2020 that you've testified about. You were shown an exhibit yesterday that shows that you arrived at the Cup Foods on the 38th Street side of Cup Foods at 8:23 and 12 seconds.
Don't recollect the time, sir.
Okay. Would you like me to show you that exhibit, or would you agree that that's probably correct? I can show you the exhibit.
Yes, show me the exhibit.
All right. I am showing you Exhibit 18. Yeah, you can see that?
Yeah, correct.
This was already admitted into evidence yesterday. You would agree that Exhibit 18 shows you walking along 38th Street on May 25th, 2020 at 8:23 and 12 seconds.
Correct.
Okay. So, I'm not trying to trick you, all right?
That's fine.
All right. And it's fair to say that prior to your arrival there, you had no idea what had been going on in the area.
No, not at all. Like I said, I just seen squad cars and didn't know what was going on.
Right. And you testified that as you kind of came around the corner, your energy sort of pulled you towards that incident, right?
Yeah, that's totally correct.
So you would have absolutely no idea that an ambulance was called 3 minutes before you arrived.
Don't know anything about that.
You would have had no idea that an ambulance was stepped up to code 3, which means get here quick, 2 minutes before you arrived.
No recollections of any of that.
You weren't there, you wouldn't possibly know, right?
Wouldn't know at all.
You testified that kind of based on your experience as a security guard, your first inclination is to just sort of observe everything that's going on, right?
Totally correct.
And that's what you did.
That's why I felt like I did correct.
So it's fair to say that you had not observed any prior contact between the Minneapolis Police Department and Mr. Floyd.
Only what I seen.
You would have no idea that they had been dealing with him for 15 minutes prior to your arrival.
Objection, Your Honor.
Not mine.
No, right?
He can still answer that question?
You can still answer that.
Oh,
If you'd like me to state it again.
repeat that question.
You were not aware that the police had been dealing with Mr. Floyd for 15 minutes prior to your arrival.
Not at all.
Now, you testified that as you were observing Mr. Floyd on the ground, you observed blood coming from his nose or mouth area, right?
Correct. And someone actually stated that if you watch the video.
Right. I've watched the video. But you would not have been aware that 3 minutes prior to your arrival, an ambulance was called specifically because he was bleeding from the mouth.
That had nothing to do with me, sir.
But you made certain assumptions.
What was your answer again?
I didn't have nothing, recollections of that, nothing to do with me.
Sometimes the court reporter can't hear, so that's the only reason for this.
No, Your Honor, appreciate you, man.
Okay.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Nelson.
Thank you. But you yesterday testified that you assumed that the blood coming from Mr. Floyd's nose and mouth area was from his face being pushed into the cement.
I didn't say that. I don't. Can you? Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah.
You answered my question.
Right. His blood coming through his nose. I said blood's coming through his nose. I didn't say how I got there or where.
I'm going
it
to
came from.
ask it. That's non-responsive objection. You've answered my question, sir.
All right. Stop. Objection is sustained. Jury disregard the last remark that was not in response to a question. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. You testified that after the ambulance came, you saw 2 additional officers, right?
Correct.
And you, prior to that happening, had no idea that those 2 officers were back there, right?
Correct.
So it's fair to assume that you did not hear any of the conversations between the officers, correct?
Tower didn't let me get close enough. Correct.
Right. The question is, did you hear any of the conversations between the officers? Yes or no?
Please repeat that because you said it different the first time.
Sure. Did you hear any of the conversation occurring between the 3 officers with Mr. Floyd? Yes or no?
No.
It's fair to say that as you were there, you grew angrier.
Correct. That's what you perceive.
Pardon?
I said, is that what you took from the video? Correct.
Right. As you were there and interacting with Officer Tao and Officer Chauvin, you grew more and more upset. Would you agree with that?
Correct.
You grew angry, right?
I grew control and professionalism.
Okay. Again, you made a statement to Agents Garvey and Eckert and in that statement you said,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this form of cross-examination.
Overruled.
Which one, Your Honor?
Overruled.
Proceed.
in that statement you said, like, I really wanted to beat the shit out of the police officers.
Mhm.
You said that.
Yeah, I did. That's what I felt.
You were angry.
No, you can't paint me out as angry. I was in a position where I had to be controlled, of control professionalism. I wasn't angry because I stayed
You
on the curb.
object as non-responsive.
Well, I'm objecting.
Overruled. Overruled. Answer will stand. Next question.
Thank you. You started calling them names. Yes?
You heard that, yeah. You heard the
Right?
video.
You called him a tough guy, right?
You watched the video.
You call him a real man, right?
You watched the video.
You do have to answer the question yes or no based on what he's asking.
I'm going to ask you that again, so your answers should be yes or no, okay?
Yes.
You called him a tough guy.
I did.
You called him a real man.
I did.
You called him such a man.
I did.
You called him bogus.
I did.
You called him a bum at least 13 times.
That's what you counted in the video?
That's what I counted.
And that's what you got, 13.
And that was early on, right? Those terms grew more and more angry. Would you agree with that?
They grew more and more pleading for life.
All right. After you called him a bum 13 times, you called him a fucking bum.
That's what you heard?
Did you say that?
Is that what you heard?
I'm asking you, sir.
I'm pretty
Did
sure
you
I
say
did.
that?
You heard that. I'm pretty sure you did.
You call him a fucking pussy ass bitch.
If that's what you heard, I'm sure that's what
I'm
I did.
asking you, did you say that?
If that's what the video recalled, that's what I did.
You called him a bitch.
If that's the video you heard from the video,
It's
that's
a
what I
yes or
did.
no, sir.
If that's what was heard on the video, yes, I did.
And at one point, you said that Officer Tao pushed you.
That's correct. He didn't. He put his hand in my chest, is what I said.
And you observed Officer Tao push someone else, right? Or feel like he pushed someone else.
I didn't let him touch anyone else.
Do you recall saying, "I dare you to touch me like that. I swear I'll slap the fuck out of both of you"?
Yeah, I did. I meant it.
So again, sir, it's fair to say that you grew angrier and angrier.
No, I grew professional and professional, and I stayed in my body. You can't paint me out to be angry.
You were not standing, you were walking around, right?
Correct. Control.
And at times, you would go forward towards where Officer Chauvin was, right?
Correct.
And at times, you'd walk to the side, correct?
Well, I didn't really get too close to Officer Chauvin, actually. Tao did not allow me to get all close to Officer Chauvin.
You attempted to walk closer.
I stepped off the curb and I stepped back on the curb.
Because Officer Tao didn't permit you to go forward.
He said, step back on the curb.
Your voice, right? You weren't just saying you're a bum. Would you agree with that?
You said I wasn't just saying.
Right.
he was
The
a bum.
tone of your voice.
Tone of my voice was loud, so people could hear me.
And it grew louder and louder.
So I could be heard.
And after Mr. Floyd was taken by the ambulance, you continued to interact with Officer Tao as well as other people on the scene, correct?
That's correct. After they retreated, I know they had to retreat. I said what I said. I know they can say more to me.
And you continued to yell these types of things after Mr. Floyd was gone, right?
Me and Mr. Tao had words back and forth, correct.
And I think you said something about hoping he would shoot himself.
No, I didn't say I hope he's going to shoot himself. I said within the next 2 years, you will shoot yourself in your head for what you did. I didn't say hope. I don't hope death on anyone. The Bible doesn't allow that.
So again, you continued to engage with these officers, right?
Tao.
And your voice was loud, right?
Yeah, he tried to intimidate me, so.
The officers, most of the officers were on the other side of 38th Street.
Me and Tao was standing in front of each other.
At one point, Officer Tao goes across the street as well, right?
They both had to retreat, correct.
And you continued to yell these same types of things.
Probably would. Correct, yeah. Wasn't being heard.
And it was over and over and over and over again, right?
Because I wasn't being heard.
It's a yes or no question, sir. Was it over and over and over again?
Yes, because I wasn't being heard.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I have a few more questions for you.
Yes, sir.
In MMA fighting, do you ever have a situation where your opponent is handcuffed behind the back?
Never.
Do you ever have a situation in MMA where there are 3 people fighting against 1?
Never.
And when you were on the scene at 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year, when you were watching this interaction between these 4 Minneapolis police officers and Mr. Floyd, were you watching a cage match at the time?
Well, I only seen 2 of them, the animals. So I was watching more of a humane shit show.
Okay.
Objection.
And
Sorry about what you said.
That's okay.
Okay.
so you weren't watching a sport that day, were you?
Not at all.
Mr. Nelson asked you a couple times about this kind of blood choke around the throat. Are you, based on your training, your experience doing this yourself, can you apply a blood choke to one side of the neck?
Correct.
And is that done in mixed martial arts?
That is done. Correct.
So whether Mr. Nelson wants to ask you about doing it on both sides of the neck, you've seen it done on one side of the neck.
Correct.
All right. And when you were on the street there at 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year, watching Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd, was it that kind of blood choke you thought you were seeing on one side of the neck?
That is correct.
Mr. Nelson asked you about seeing times when somebody has been unconscious in a mixed martial arts fight and come to and try to wrestle again or fight again. When an opponent is rendered unconscious through something like a chokehold in a mixed martial arts fight, is the fight stopped?
Right away, immediately, medical attention, right away.
Mr. Nelson asked you about dealing with crowds that are upset in your experience as a security guard. When you're dealing with a crowd that is upset, are there ways to try and de-escalate the situation without using force?
That is correct.
Like what kinds of things can you do?
Really staying calm, being humane, talking to the person, trying to talk them down, just getting the person away from the situation, just being humane with the person. What worked for me in downtown Minneapolis as a security guard and with drunk people that I'm babysitting pretty much. Like I have to come to and try to figure out a way how to solve this problem without putting physical force to them unless they are trying to physically enforce on me.
So while you were on the street there on 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year and watching Mr. Chauvin hold Mr. Floyd down, did you see Officer Tao try to de-escalate that situation at all with the crowd? Well, based on your training and experience as a security guard and your testimony just now about ways to de-escalate the situation, did you see Tao doing anything like that while you were there on that scene?
Sustained. Sidebar.
I gotta say though, for everybody, hey, Occam's Razor, for everybody saying about the defense, you guys are forgetting some major, major, major things. One of them being, we are looking at it at the after effect. We were not there. We did not see what actually went down, because if you want to go by what we saw, what I saw this whole thing could have been avoided if he wasn't high. This whole thing could have been avoided if he didn't fight the police. He would not be dead right now if not for his own actions. That has to play a part in all of this. Now, looking at it from the way everybody else is, yes, we saw a video, we saw him on his neck. Nobody's denying that. But you have to look at the other side. Reagan, I understand, but that body footage also showed the other part.
Mr. Fair.
When you're dealing with a crowd as a security guard,
Overruled, he hasn't finished the question.
And you have, as Mr. Nelson described them, a crowd that's upset. Would it help in your situation as a security guard to have other security guards present?
Yes, it does. More presence, better.
During your cross-examination, you were asked about the time that Officer Tao touched you, put his hand on your chest.
Correct.
And your reaction was what?
I immediately swiped his hand because I felt threatened, and then I stepped back and I put my hands forward, and I really was threatened by his presence. So again, I put my hands up, didn't know what else was going to move forward, and I proceeded to step back.
So
I know you backed up to demonstrate, but if you could move back up.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Oh, no problem. I think we heard you, so you're fine.
Just got to stay close to the microphone. So you didn't want Officer Tao touching you?
Not at all.
And other than pushing his hand away, you didn't touch him?
Not at all. We kind of just...
And then you went back up on the curb?
That's correct.
During your cross-examination, you used the term the officer's retreat.
Correct.
What did you mean by that, retreat?
What I mean is I'm not a law enforcement or by any means, but I know I see when certain cases happen when it comes to certain things like this, most of the officers retreat away from the scene until all the right authorities come on scene to take care of everything. And that's what I noticed that they did. They retreated away from the scene to the other side of the street, and that's where they stayed until whoever came and deal with them.
Okay. Also, during your cross-examination, Mr. Nelson asked you about things that happened before you got to the scene.
That's correct.
You weren't at all trying to tell the jury in your previous testimony that you knew things that occurred before you got there?
Nah, not at all. I was deer in the headlights.
But when you got there, for that time period after you arrived and saw Mr. Chauvin with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck on the ground there, until the ambulance took him, you watched that entire time?
I watched. Yeah, I watched everything.
And so during that time that you were watching, did you see anything that you thought justified holding Mr. Floyd down that way?
No, at all.
Answer is stricken.
Did you see Mr. Floyd fighting back to the officers?
No.
Did you see whether Mr. Floyd lost consciousness while you were there watching?
Correct.
Your Honor.
Yeah. No argument on objections. I'll ask for sidebar if I want objection or if I want argument. The objection is overruled. You may proceed. Ask the question again so Mr. Williams knows what it is.
while you were there watching, was there a time when you saw Mr. Floyd lose consciousness?
That is correct. We referred to the fish.
That's,
Yeah.
you were asked multiple times about being angry
That's correct.
and more upset as time went on.
Correct.
So why? Why did you get angry and more upset as time went on?
Because again, they were not listening to anything that I was telling them. I felt like I had to speak out for Floyd because he was speaking out to the officer, and there was no feedback, no emotion, no nothing. Like I literally looked in his eyes and had, as I'm talking to him.
I mean, I'll just stop you there.
We're going to stop the answer there. Next question.
What did you think was happening to Mr. Floyd?
He was under distress.
That answer will stand, but move on from that.
You felt he was in danger?
Correct.
In danger of what?
Counsel sidebar.
All right, it was 5 officers to hold him down. But I think the point that, now I would have to ask my brother because I don't know this answer, but are cops trained like to know exactly where the windpipe is? Like was he trained to know exactly how to do a chokehold? Because if I had my knee on someone's neck, I wouldn't know if it was like, you know, if I was killing them or not. You don't know unless you're trained in it. Oh, and Reagan, I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. He was. Okay. Reagan, I'm not saying you didn't kill him. He definitely did kill him, but that's not my issue. And someone asked him, stop saying that is correct instead of yes. Yeah, I'm not saying that, you know, it was a murder. He definitely killed him. But to what extent? They know exactly where the windpipe is. He was trained 19 years. Even in that position, I know that you can easily find it with your hand, but what about in that position? Can you do it with your knee that easy? Or are you trained just with your hands? And he probably wanted him to pass out. Like, here's what I think. I think it was a power thing. I think he did it for a power thing. He was showing him, I have power, you don't. Fuck you. And I've said that many of times that I believe this was straight up murder. He was trained. No, he didn't. These other officers were only on the force for a week. So he was exerting power. He was exerting control. I wonder if they're listening to the audio tapes. Why does old boy have nail polish on his finger? The lawyer's got nail polish on his thumb. Either that or a bruised thumb. Looks like he has black nail polish on it. If it was sexist and racist act. Judge is going to take a break.
So, Mr. Williams, why did you think it was so important that you were not being heard?
Because I felt like with the side choke, you lose consciousness, and I felt like he was in the process of losing consciousness, also from the condition of my fish in the bag.
So
is it overruled?
You can continue.
So, like I said before earlier, he reminded me of my fish in the bag.
So let me ask it this way then.
The last no will be stricken about the fish in the bag.
And so then, I'm sorry. So you were concerned about Mr. Floyd losing his life?
Correct.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
You were asked a series of questions on redirect about your experience in mixed martial arts, if you recall.
Correct.
Can you tell me about any of the conversations that you had as you were being rendered unconscious in any of your fights?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. You're saying...
What did you just ask me?
What did you do? No, just wait. Let me rule on the objection first. The objection is overruled. You may answer if you have a recollection as to any time. Ask the question again, but don't answer until I say so.
When you were engaged in mixed martial arts, in your fights, in your competitive fights, can you tell me, were you able to have a conversation with your opponent as you were being rendered unconscious? Yes or no?
We don't talk to each other, so no.
Nothing further.
Yes, Your Honor. You said earlier you're not a medical doctor.
That's totally correct.
If Mr. Nelson is asking you whether a person can...
Objection, Your Honor.
Stop. You're not allowed to give a medical opinion. Mr. Frank is going to ask you about your personal experience. If you have such a personal experience, you can talk about your personal experience. Nothing more. Mr. Frank, please phrase it in terms of his personal experience, not an opinion.
I will, Your Honor. In a mixed martial arts fight, when you are being rendered unconscious in a chokehold, you tap out, correct?
Correct.
And that's to prevent it from going too far.
Correct, losing conscious.
And the tap out is the communication you use to your opponent to say, hey, let up.
That is correct.
And your opponent has to follow that communication.
That's correct.
That's the rules of the fight.
That's the rules of the fight.
And so when you tap out, they know it's done and it stops.
Correct. And only time you go verbally.
That's an answer to the question, right?
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Williams, you are excused. Thank you. All right. Members of the jury, our next 4 witnesses are going to be persons who, because of their age, I am allowing them not to be on the video broadcast. Obviously, you will be able to see them in the courthouse. But just so you know what is going out beyond this courtroom, their video will not be shown. Further, when they give their name and spell their names for the record, that will be off the audio that is being broadcast outside this courtroom. Just so you know what the general public is seeing. You will, of course, see and hear everything. I'm also allowing, contrary to what is often in the rules of decorum that we operate under, that they can refer to other people who are at the scene by their first names, as opposed to Mr. or Ms. So that's with court permission. They're not violating anything by doing so. So with that, the state will be bringing in its next witness. There will be 4 in a row, probably. We're not going to get to all of them before we take a break, probably 1 at most. Okay, thank you. Okay. 5 minutes? Okay. Well, why don't we just take our morning break for now, and if we have to take another one, we can do that as well. Let's break for 20 minutes. We'll be back at... Okay. Change of plan. All right. We're ready to go with our first witness.
Are they breaking or not breaking? I guess not. No break, witness. I don't understand it. What do you mean the witness's age? Oh, yeah. Like, what kind of witness are they having that's under 18? So we can't even hear their testimony?
Voice that we'll be able to hear at the microphone. If there's any problem, I'll maybe move you up or back, but it seems like you're doing just fine. So I'm going to turn it over, going back on audio, to Mr. Blackwell.
Good morning, Darnell.
Good morning.
Are you a little nervous up there?
Yes.
It's understandable. I'm just going to take a few minutes this morning to talk with you and give the jury a chance to hear from you about what you saw, how you reacted, and what happened on May 25th, okay?
Yes.
First of all, Darnella, would you tell us how old you are?
I'm 18 years old.
And 1 week ago, were you 18 years old?
No.
So you just had a birthday?
Yes.
And so when we talk about May 25th of last year, you were?
17.
Are you a student?
Yes.
Tell us, where do you go to? Are you in high school?
Yes.
Where do you go to high school?
9th through 11th, I went to Roosevelt High School. Then made the decision to switch to Augsburg Fairview Academy for my 12th grade year.
Okay. So you most certainly remember the date of May 25th of last year.
Yes.
I want to take you to a certain time period on May 25th at around 7 o'clock p.m. on May 25th. Do you recall walking to Cup Foods?
Yes.
And were you by yourself?
No.
Were you walking with a cousin of yours?
Yes.
Do you recall how old your cousin was?
Maybe 12, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Maybe 9?
Maybe.
Now you're walking to Cup Foods. Where were you walking from?
Home.
So you live nearby?
Yes.
Would you describe Cup Foods as a neighborhood store?
Yes.
Now the jury may have heard something about this being a dangerous neighborhood. Were you concerned for your safety in walking with your cousin to Cup Foods?
No.
If you had to estimate, how many times would you say you walked to Cup Foods from your home in the neighborhood?
Hundreds to maybe even thousands.
So you and your cousin walk into Cup Foods. What were you going there for? Do you remember?
I was taking her to get some snacks.
Your cousin loves snacks?
Yes.
So let's go to May 25th of 2020, and I want to show you a couple of things just to set the scene for our discussion. I want to show you what's been marked for identification purposes, for our purposes, as Exhibit 13. Your Honor, I think I need a handler. Okay, I got one. Now, in Exhibit 13, do you see two people in that, in what is a photograph?
Yes, but I also see two people back there, if that
I see.
counts.
Right, you see two people in the front of the photo and two people in the back.
Yes.
Is this photo a true and accurate depiction of you and your cousin in the
Yes.
front of the photograph on May 25th?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll offer Exhibit 13 in evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
13 is received. Would you like me to publish?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. All right, now the jury can see it too. Now this is a screen that you can actually mark on. And so if we see the two people that are right here in the front of this picture, there's a little girl with the word love on her sweatshirt, and there's another person next to her. One of those persons you?
Yes.
And which one, the bigger one or the little one?
The bigger one.
And this is your cousin next to you?
Yes.
And is this as you walk into to Cup Foods?
Yes.
I want to show you what we've marked as Exhibit 16 for the trial. If you could pull that up, Brad. Now, is this a video that you've seen before?
Yes.
Do you have personal knowledge of the scene that's depicted in this exhibit?
Yes.
Is this video a true and accurate depiction of the scene as you saw it on May 25th of 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers Exhibit 16 in evidence.
Any objection? 16 is received.
So, Mr. Eltiste, if you could play this a little ways, I want to ask you some questions about it. So we can see with the jury, two people walking from the left to the right. There's a little girl in a green shirt, and there you are. Do you see you?
Yes.
And is this as you all were approaching Cup Foods on May 25th?
Yes.
Now see there, your cousin goes into the store. Why did she go into the store and then you turned around and then came back toward the squad cars?
I wanted to make sure she got in.
You can stop there, Brad, for a second. When you walked past the squad car there, did you see anything happening there on the ground as you were walking towards Cup Foods with your cousin?
Yes. I see a man on the ground and I see a cop kneeling down on him.
Was there anything about the scene that you didn't want your cousin to see?
Yes.
And what was that?
A man terrified, scared, begging for his life.
Is that why you directed your cousin to going into Cup Foods?
Yes.
And then when you saw what was happening there at the scene, what was it about the scene that caused you to come back?
It wasn't right. He was suffering. He was in pain.
Let me stop you there for just a second, Darnell. And so when you say, first of all, he, are you referring to the person you come to know as George Floyd?
Yes.
Did you know anything about Mr. George Floyd before May 25th?
No.
Had you ever met him before?
No.
Ever seen him before to your knowledge?
No.
So when you came back to this scene here that we can see in Exhibit 16, what did you do when you first got there and we see where you're standing? What did you do?
I pulled out my phone.
And what were you doing in pulling out your phone?
Recording and capturing what I was seeing.
And we have already admitted into evidence in this case the video which you had done, which was our Exhibit 15 that's in evidence. So tell the jury what you observed, what you heard when you stopped to look at what was happening there at the scene.
I heard George Floyd saying, I can't breathe, please get off of me. I can't breathe. He cried for his mom. He was in pain. It seemed like he knew. It seemed like he knew it was over for him. He was terrified. He was suffering. This was a cry for help. Definitely.
Yeah. You'll disregard any opinions about how Mr. Floyd was feeling, but you can rely on her observations. To the extent that you deem appropriate. Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Donna, let me show you for a moment. We'll come back to this discussion. Let me show you Exhibit 17. That's also already in evidence. So can you see the person depicted on Exhibit 17? Darnella, are you able to tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury if you know who this man is? You can take your time.
Yes.
Please tell the ladies and gentlemen, who is this?
This was the officer that was kneeling on George Floyd's neck.
On May 25th?
Yes.
Is this the way he appeared when you saw him on May 25th, kneeling on George Floyd's neck?
Yes.
When you first arrived at the scene, you can take that down, Brett. When you first arrived at the scene and you started recording with your phone camera, were there other bystanders or others there present at the time?
No.
About how long before other people started to gather with you?
Not even a minute in.
And could you estimate roughly how many others were just there around you who were also observing what was happening?
Maybe about 12, 14, something around that maybe.
If I showed you a picture of those who were there, might you recognize those who might have been present with you? Let's see. Ready to pull up Exhibit 184.
Refresh memory, is that correct?
Yes, John, just one moment. Let me make sure it's just that only that she can see it.
I've already got it.
All right, thank you, Judge. As you look at Exhibit 184, do these look like in this exhibit the other bystanders who were with you at the scene on May 25th?
Yes.
Your Honor, offer 184 in evidence.
Any objection? No objection. 184 as you see.
So looking at this picture, photograph at 184, can you identify for us any of the other bystanders? We know that you identify your cousin to the right. How about any of the people, others here in the photograph?
This is a former friend. This is a friend I went to school with, Alyssa.
Would you just point her out so that you can mark on the screen actually?
Right there.
I'm sorry.
The arrow was on
I'm sorry, Judge. Could you repeat that?
The arrow is on the screen.
The arrow's on the screen.
Yeah,
Yeah, just one moment. Is she able to mark from where she is?
she did. She put the arrow on the screen to mark where her friend is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You see the arrow, Mr. Blackwell?
Yeah, no, I can't see anything on the screen at all. Yeah, all right. You mentioned there's another one of your friends in the picture.
Yes.
And what was the friend's name?
Alyssa.
And could you again point out Alyssa? Okay, now I see it. And what about any other persons you know here?
Not on the scene, but I do know people that was there at the last minute. I know some of the workers because I've lived there for a while.
But you were there the whole time as these various group of bystanders gathered together on May 25th.
Yes.
If somebody were to tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury that you and the rest of the bystanders who were there were an unruly crowd or mob, I didn't finish the question yet. Hypothetical.
I don't think it can be non-leading, so let's rephrase as a non-leading question, please.
All right. I want you to describe the nature and character of the persons gathered together there. Would you describe yourselves as an unruly mob or an unruly crowd?
Sustain. Now, overruled. I think it's the only way to get an answer. However, I would like to sidebar after this answer. Go ahead.
No, I would say everyone were reacting multiple different ways from what they were seeing, which it wasn't right. We all know it wasn't right.
The last part of the answer is stricken. I'd like a sidebar with counsel.
Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry, the technical difficulties are sending shooting pains in all of our ears.
Yes.
Mr. Blackwell, if you would.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. So as you were there with the other bystanders, did any of these bystanders ever threaten the police?
No.
Did any of them ever physically get violent with the police?
No.
Did you at the scene on May 25th see any violence at the scene at all anywhere?
Yes, from the cops, from Chauvin, and from Officer Tao. I think that's his name.
Other than the violence you saw from Mr. Chauvin and the other police, did you see any act of violence from the bystanders who were there?
No.
Did you see any of the bystanders that act in any way that you would describe as unruly?
No.
Do you think it's fair to call them a mob?
No.
Amongst the bystanders who were there, did you see any of them make an effort to actually offer care for Mr. Floyd?
Physically?
Yes.
I heard them say, "Get off of him. You're hurting him. He can't breathe. He's not moving." But anytime someone tried to get close, they were defensive, so we couldn't even get close.
So first, let's just stick with what you heard the bystanders. The bystanders were saying things to Mr. Chauvin?
Yes.
What things did you hear that were being said to Mr. Chauvin by the bystanders?
You're hurting him. Are you enjoying this? He can't breathe. He's not moving. His nose is bleeding. You're a bum. Pretty much words around that category.
And when you arrived at the scene, can you describe for us, first of all, what was the position of Mr. Floyd when you arrived at this scene and saw him by the squad car?
He was laid down on the ground, restrained. It didn't look like he could move much but his head.
And by restrained, was he in handcuffs?
Yes.
By restrained, where was Mr. Chauvin in relation to Mr. Floyd?
His knee was kneeling on his neck. It was 2 other officers holding him down as well.
And what did you hear or see Mr. Floyd doing while he was being restrained underneath, as you described, the knee of Mr. Chauvin?
He was complaining about, he was stating that he was in pain. He said his neck, his back, everything hurts. I can't breathe. Mom, he said I would get up if I could, something around that. I wouldn't say that's his exact words. But yeah, pretty much he was saying how much in pain he was. He couldn't breathe.
At some point, was there a person who came to the scene who identified herself as a firefighter?
Yes.
Are you able to see her in this exhibit 184?
Yes.
Could you point to her? Okay, and let the record reflect she's pointed to Genevieve Hanson.
As far as the name, she's identified who she believes is the firefighter.
She hasn't testified yet. So.
The record will reflect that the witness has identified the person dressed in black, holding up a phone with a white headband in Exhibit 184.
When this person who identified herself as a firefighter came, what did she do?
She asked them to check his pulse.
Who did she ask to check?
Chauvin.
And she asked Officer Chauvin to check the pulse of Mr. Floyd.
Yes.
Then what happened?
He remained kneeling on his neck. And she asked multiple times, not just once.
Then what did she do? Did she try to check his pulse?
No, they wouldn't even let us get close.
And what prevented your getting close when you say they wouldn't let us get close?
They were quick to pull out mace.
Who pulled out mace?
Officer Tao and Chauvin. He put his hand on his mace. They put their hand on their mace. I can't remember if they actually pointed it at us, but they definitely put their hand on the mace, and we all backed back.
Did you feel threatened by the police officers?
Yes.
Did you feel threatened by Mr. Chauvin?
Yes.
Why is that?
He seemed like, how do I word this? I felt like I was in danger when he did that. It rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't understand why they would do that, what we did for them to make them do that. That's why I felt threatened. I don't understand why the mace was even needed at all.
So as you were observing Mr. Floyd under the knee of Mr. Chauvin, did you ever see Mr. Chauvin do anything to offer care to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did he ever either let up or get up so that he could breathe?
No.
Did you ever see him try to administer CPR?
No.
Did you see him call anyone else to administer aid to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did he call out and ask if anybody amongst the bystanders knew CPR who might be able to help him?
Not at all.
At what point did you see, well, let me ask this, did an ambulance at some point arrive at the scene?
Yes.
And you saw the ambulance arrive there?
Yes.
Roughly how many minutes after you first started watching what was happening to Mr. Floyd did the ambulance show up?
The end of my video, the video was about 10 minutes. I would say maybe somewhere around 9. I'm not sure.
So was there any point in your video, whether it's 9 or 10 minutes, that Mr. Chauvin ever let up or got up off of the neck of Mr. Floyd that you saw?
No. If anything, he actually was kneeling harder. It looked like he was shoving his knee in his neck. Like he was, yeah.
So was it your experience then, as the bystanders cried out, that Mr. Chauvin kneeled in even harder? Is that what you're saying?
Can you rephrase that?
You told us that it looked like Mr. Chauvin was kneeling in even harder on
Yes.
Mr. Floyd. Was there anything that was in response to that he was kneeling harder?
I feel like he was feeding off of our energy.
Calls for speculation.
I want to
Counsel, should we take our morning break at this time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Members of the jury, we're going to break until 11:15. We're in recess.
Perfect. Now I didn't have to bust out. All right, so check this out. I am not saying that he's not guilty. I saw it. I watched the same video you guys did. But what you guys can't get, not all of you, but some of you can't get past is that you have to put yourself in the beginning. You can't look at it as, no, Reagan, hear me out. You can't look at it as the big picture. You've seen everything there is to see and it's murder. You can't think like that. You have to think like if you're sitting on a juror. If you're sitting on a jury, you have to look at it as, you know what? We don't know all the details. Maybe there's something we missed. Maybe there's something in here that we haven't seen on video. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but it could happen. You guys, you just got to take yourself out of the mentality that, you know what? It's clear cut and dry. He's guilty and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter checking. We don't know. I've seen so many things that at first glance looks like it was the worst thing in the world. And then when you get the entire story, all of a sudden, the cop wasn't wrong. Now, in this instance, yes, he should have came up immediately. Nobody's denying that. But if you're going to look at a trial, if you're going to watch a trial or really try to look at I can't think of the right word, but you're really trying to look at it in the right way, then sit as a juror. Forget everything you saw. You can't keep remembering everything you saw and look at the whole big picture. You have to look at step by step by step. And when I say stuff or when I'm looking at stuff, I'm looking at it as if I never saw that video. Because that's how the jurors have to be. You have to act like a juror and that you never saw the video. And you have to put yourself in the mind of everybody without remembering that video. And exactly, you have to look up moment by moment, step by step. That's how I look when I watch a trial. I put myself in that position from behind. Like, if I never saw that video, what would I think of this? Listening to the evidence, listening to the people. That's how you have to analyze it, piece by piece. That's why they take you through every single thing. Yeah, but checking, you don't know the circumstances. We don't know everything yet. We know so little right now. Yeah, in order to be a correct juror, you have, just like Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony is a perfect example of that. Her jury did exactly what they were supposed to do. And she didn't get convicted. Is she guilty? Fuck yeah, she's guilty. She's guilty as fuck. But you know what? The jury did the right thing in getting her off. There was reasonable doubt. So you can't, people like you that look at it automatically, you saw the video, was murdered, without wanting to see the evidence. Yeah, but there's also extenuating circumstances that play a part, Occam's razor. Think about it. The guy was high as fuck. He was on drugs that definitely could have given him a heart attack. Should so-and-so have cut off his breathing? Of course not. Should he have gotten up? Shouldn't he have gotten up, 8 minutes before he did? Absolutely. He should have. Absolutely. he shouldn't have been on there for 9 minutes. He shouldn't have been on there for 1 minute. We get this. We know this. But there's other factors that play a part, just like the guys that get off, just like Casey Anthony. You don't want another Scott Peterson where you go into something and you have to be guilty because you go with your gut. We don't have enough evidence to say what he did yet. By the end of this trial, yeah, we can easily say it was murder, but you can't go into it with that mentality. Yeah, but Occam's razor, it took 5 guys to hold him down. He, not victim blaming, but if you look at it from a police standpoint, I totally agree, Jason, but if you look at it from a police standpoint, he wouldn't be dead if he wouldn't have fought with them. He wouldn't be dead if he did what he was supposed to do. Does that put any guilt on him? No. Does it put anything, does it mean he should be dead? No, of course not. But he was being violent, Occam. That's what you're not getting. He was on all sorts of drugs, which could make somebody flip at any given time. And it took 5 guys to subdue him because he wouldn't stay in the car. I mean, he wasn't completely innocent here. Should he be dead? Absolutely not. But he's not completely innocent. He didn't deserve to die, but he's not completely innocent. It's hard, but you have to take the emotion out of it. I keep trying to turn mine off and still hear it. Hear what? Oh, no, that's yours. Now, I thought it was 5 guys that held him down. But Reagan, he was cuffed and still got out the other side of the car. And again, now I'm going to take a police viewing or whatever you want to call it. We are seeing everything after the fact. You guys have to get out, 4 officers in total, get out of the mentality that after seeing everything, you have to get out of that mentality. I would not want you guys on my trial if I was falsely accused. You have to look at it as you know nothing. You never saw that tape. And it's very hard to do. It's not easy to do. But if you're going to look at a trial objectively, that's the word I couldn't think of. If you're going to look at a trial objectively and honestly hear both sides like a juror has to do and not go in there with these preconceived notions, you have to take out everything that you've seen to date and let both sides walk you through it. So if he ran away in cuffs, would he have been shot? I wonder. I don't know. Probably. Yeah, we witnessed 3 of them. As I've said before, so there's no confusion of people, on, let's say, I'm trying to think. I don't know how to put this. Why they show the tape to the jury first thing? I can't answer that. I don't know. Maybe they need to go back and see why potential jurors were selected and were not selected. Once they understand this perspective, they might understand this. I know nothing. That's true. Even as a defense attorney, you have to forget everything that you know. You have to forget everything that you think you saw and listen to the facts. I mean, it's law 101. And for those of you that were with me during Making a Murderer, it's the same thing. It was very easy to say, yeah, Avery was guilty, Avery was guilty, Avery was guilty. But once I actually listened to both sides and heard and read all the testimony, I don't know why it keeps doing that. That's when I realized this man is not guilty. But I had to listen to all the testimony. I had to read through the transcripts and read through everything. That's when I realized Avery wasn't guilty. It's the same thing. And I'm not saying this guy's not guilty. Don't get me wrong. Oh, I know, GB. I think they may have been showing specific video. And Linda, so you know. You know exactly what I'm talking about then. As a jury, you're there to watch through fresh eyes minute by minute. Exactly. Avery is not guilty, Reagan. I know you have. Checking. You just changed her name. Avery is not guilty, Reagan. He is as innocent as can be. Oh, you guys suck. That's where me and Checking agree. Avery is innocent. 100% innocent. But we're not going to go there. Oh my God. I'm not even going to go there because you guys know. Thank you, Love My. Brennan is innocent. You can't. Oh, I hate when people say this, Reagan. You can't have one guilty and one innocent. Without Brendan's testimony, Avery is innocent. But let me go one step further, dummies. And I really mean dummies. Because check this out. How are you going to have one murder in two different places, done two different ways, and you're both convicted? Explain that one to me. Explain that one to me. One murder, one person, but yet the crimes were done in two different places, two different murders. Hey, Yarn, two different murders for the same person, but in two different places and both done completely different. Absolutely impossible, cannot happen. But it happened in the Avery case. Don't even get me started. The man is innocent. Plain and simple. Innocent. Don't be laughing at me, Occam Razor. I'm 100% right. You cannot mess with me on my Avery. I know that case as well as I know my kids. So there. I got tons of them, Christine. I was more mellow, too. You see all my hair changes. That's when I had alopecia, though. Who do you think killed her? I have said from way before Kathleen Zellner said it, that it was Bobby and Scott. I'm sorry, Bobby, Mike, and Scott. And if you watch my old videos, even Val or Linda can attest to that. I was the first person to say it was them. Yeah, exactly. Inside out, upside down. I was the very first person to say that it was Mike, Bobby, and Scott. Laura's only had a few hours sleep, and now you got a MAM talk. Shut up, Val. Yep, she was. I was. Zellner came out with like 2 years later, and everyone was like, wow, Zellner, you're so smart. I'm like, bitch, I had that down 2 years ago. Get the fuck out of here. You ain't stealing my spotlight, Zellner. I don't care how many convictions you got. We worked hard on that. It was Scott's, Bobby Dassey's best friend. Mike Asa something. I can't even remember his last name. Asmosin or something. Hey, Yarn, listening while cooking. That's a good thing. What you cooking? Osmosis, something like it. It was Bobby's best friend. Asmarasin, I don't know, something like that. Osminson. That wasn't it. It was close, though. Pregnant girl around the same time. Yeah, but that was a completely separate case. That was done by the husband. Shut up, GB. Be nice to me. I really haven't had a lot of sleep. But yeah, don't get me started on MAM. Back to George. Avery case dead. It's not dead, though. I wish something would happen. Now, corruption? Kratz belongs in prison. That man belongs in prison. Someone asked me yesterday who I'd like to ever have lunch with. Ken Kratz. Because I'd like spit in his face. Lamb with rice and vegetables. Sounds yummy. I've never cooked lamb. I only buy it from the gyro store. That's not true, Love My. That's dumb. I definitely would go watch that. Yeah, I was mellow. Sometimes I was mellow. We could go on and on. New DCI reports, mind-blowing. Oh, there's new report. I haven't followed the case at all. I couldn't tell you what's going on with it. All I knew is I predicted 3 years ago that Zellner was going to do nothing. And sure enough, 3 years later, Zellner has done nothing. I knew it then, and I knew it now. I miss, Kratz is a dweeb. I do miss my old partner in crime, Eric Cozy. Hope he's hanging out talking to Teresa. That was a sad death. I knew she wouldn't. I said it 3 years ago. After the first, what's it called? The first motion, I was like, this is bullshit. This motion is bullshit. I was like, she's not even putting good case law in here. I'm like, this is a joke. And everyone got mad at me, but I'm stuck with it. I said, nah, I'm telling you, this is a joke. She sucks. There's nothing here. And all these, quote unquote, I know law, Laura doesn't know law. Well, sure enough, who was right? That would be me. I'm not a fan of hers at all. She got nothing. Exactly, Reagan. Absolutely nothing. Her motions were always weak. The first one, I believe, came, there was one she did that was like right out of mine and Irakozi's like videos. It was very weird. She has tons of merits in this motion. Yeah, but her motions are weak. Every single one of them are weak. She's like winging it. She couldn't wing it. You can't wing a corrupt case. You gotta have your shit down. And she had nothing. A lot of things that make it a murderer too, you could find on my videos that were like way before she even walked in. I don't know, Linda. Ooh, judge is late. There he is. State of Minnesota. The Great Seal of the State of Minnesota, 1858. True, you got it with this case. What do you mean? Are we back? How come they're not showing it? No, we're not back yet. Man suffers severe reaction to COVID-19 vaccine. She got that young guy out. Yeah, but every single one of his cases, every single one of her cases are DNA. That's how she's gotten everyone off, is DNA. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. When it comes to the drugs, a lot of people think drugs have nothing to do with anything. But you know what? Exactly, right, Chasing Truth? But it does. Because when you're a cop, you know somebody's on drugs. That does alter with the mind. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know, how they're going to react to something or if they're going to freak out or not freak out. You have no idea. From a cop perspective, you have no idea how someone's going to react on drugs or what drugs they're on or anything. And like I said, so you got to stop looking at it from a know-it-all position. Had my yeah, you'll never see me get that vaccine. Hell to the no. I don't do vaccines. I'll take my chances. I've been alright 50 years. If I die, it was meant to be. Muscle aches, nausea, fever. Yeah, because you got COVID. They shot you with a live vaccine. Keep it your B. Thank you, Linda. All right, Reagan, I picked off one of you. Never, not ever, ever, not in the slide. I totally agree. Totally agree. Hey, Akam, is it on another channel or is it still... You'll never see him shoot me up with anything. Yeah, but Reagan, so another COVID comes out, just like the flu. Yeah, get a flu shot, but there's still 15 strains you can get. I remember when they wanted my kids to get a chickenpox shot. Fuck no. But they can get it. I said, you know what? I had chickenpox. I survived. My whole generation had chickenpox. We survived. My kids get chickenpox. They'll survive. Thank you. Millions of us survive chickenpox. Most kids do too. But if everyone else is vaccinated, then I don't have to worry about my kids getting it. So we're all right. Because the rest of the world is vaccinated. So I'm good. I will never forget, ever forget, one of the reasons that I snapped. My kids were real young. I mean, they were babies. The twins were babies. And they had to get some kind of shots. Like, this was when I really, stopped doing shots. But they had to get some kind of shots. They were both babies. So they had to be, maybe 3 months old, 4 months old. Whenever you get your first shot, a month old. I don't remember. But 2 nurses came in with 2 needles apiece. And they held the babies down and they put 2 needles in each leg of each of them. I was like, oh, hell to the fucking no on this. No. No. This is fucking the way I'll never forget it. They literally just came in and just stabbed both of them at the same time. 2 on each leg. Fuck no. And they never got shots after that. Well, they did, they had to, but it was different. They never got a live shot after that, I should say. 4 months? Horrible. Never ever forget that. Boom. Like, not even one at a time. It was just boom. Hell no. Not what I've seen. Frontline here. Hey, Dari. Where is this trial? Are they slow? Is the trial on anywhere else or no? Yeah, but you could still get COVID. Just because you got the shot, now there's a different strain. Nah, you'll never see me get shots. Hell no. I'll take my chances, thanks. If I'm meant to die, I'm meant to die. Plain and simple. Whether I get hit by a car or I die of COVID, if I was meant to die that day, I'm gonna go. It's not back yet. Alright, I just want to make sure. Because, you know, sometimes, like, one's slower than the other. Maybe the judge is taking a poop. Not back yet. I was supposed to. Alright, good. Same, I'm not getting the vaccine. Won't let my kids get it. Hell no. Mm-mm. No, 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 no. I remember fighting with people, vaccinations. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, this was the difference of my son being completely, like, over-the-top autistic or not. And everyone said to me, like, how could you say it's the shots? And this was before Jenny McCarthy. How could you say it's the shots? I said, here's my theory. A kid, and we're all born with chemical imbalances or addiction or anything. You're all born like that. And if somebody has something wrong with them, then injecting them with a bunch of live shots is going to fuck up their brain because they already have a chemical imbalance. Kind of like, I equate it to like alcoholism. You are born with an alcoholic gene. If you come from a history of alcoholics, then you most likely have the alcoholic gene. And that's a real thing. So if you have the alcoholic gene and you drink, you're going to become an alcoholic. That's just a fact. You're going to become an alcoholic. So they tell you, stay away from alcohol. If you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and you get overloaded with all these fucking measles, mumps, everything, all at the same time, you're fucked. That brain is going to go into overload, and hence there's autism. I really, truly believe this. I have felt this way from the time my babies were babies. It's back on. And I really mean that 100%.
Deal with it also. I think we fixed this so that we're not going to blow our ears out next time. Let's hope.
I can, Reagan.
Thank you, Ron. Donald, before the break, let me just bring you back to where we were. You had given us testimony to the fact that you saw from time to time Mr. Chauvin kneel harder.
Yes.
You remember that testimony?
Yes.
Could you tell the ladies and jury, members of the jury, how did you see him respond and react to the crowds calling out to him? What did you see him do?
He just stared at us, looked at us. He had like this cold look, heartless. He didn't care. It seemed as if he didn't care what we were saying. It didn't change anything he was doing.
In response to what you and the other bystanders were saying, did you see him do anything differently to the body of George Floyd?
Can you
Well, I'll just ask you the question. Yes. In response to what the crowd was doing or saying, did you see him at any time kneel in harder on George Floyd in response?
Yes.
Incidentally, do you see Mr. Chauvin in the courtroom
Yes.
today? Could you please point him out?
Okay.
Yeah, for the record, just pointed to Mr. Chauvin. Thank you. Now, you had at some point told us that you were there when the ambulance came.
Yes.
Did Mr. Chauvin get off of Mr. Floyd when the ambulance arrived?
No, the ambulance person had to actually tell him to lift up.
So the ambulance arrives, and does an ambulance person get out right away and come over to ask Mr. Chauvin to lift up, or did something else happen before that?
He checked his pulse first while Chauvin's knee was still remained on George Floyd's neck.
All right, so paramedic checks his pulse with Mr. Chauvin still on his neck. Then what happened after that?
The paramedic he did like a motion, like get up, basically telling him to remove his knee. His knee was still there, even when they came, even at the end, even unresponsive.
Right. And did Mr. Chauvin get up at that time then?
Yes.
Right. As you were observing the entire scene, did you observe Mr. Floyd do anything that you felt was threatening to any of the police officers?
No.
Did you see him do anything other than call out in anguish?
No, besides maybe trying to get more comfortable. No.
Do you feel, well, let me ask the question a different way. When you arrived at the scene, you heard Mr. Floyd crying out, you told us.
Yes, from afar.
At some point during the period of time when he was under Mr. Chauvin's knees, did you see him go unconscious?
Yes.
Did you hear any discussion about whether or not he had in fact died?
No.
Did you have, when the paramedics came, they picked up his body, they took his body from the scene?
Yes.
Did they revive him there?
No.
Did you ever see him conscious again when he left the scene, before he left the scene?
No.
Incidentally, with the photograph here of the bystanders, the exhibit 184 that's in front of you, did the bystanders for the most part stay there on the sidewalk where they were?
For the most part, yes.
If they stepped at all into the street, was there an officer there telling them to get back?
Yes.
Did you see that the bystanders complied with what the officer was asking to get back?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll pass with it.
Ms. Mills.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Just have a few questions for you, okay?
Okay.
You testified that when you first came up to Cup Foods, you initially heard what was being said by Mr. Floyd, right?
Yes.
And you sent your cousin into the store, and you never went into Cup Foods yourself, right?
Correct.
You turned around, and you pretty much right away from the time you sent your cousin into the store, right away started recording, right?
Correct.
And ultimately, you recorded from that point all the way until shortly after the paramedics came and left, right?
Correct.
All right. And so it's fair to say that prior to, well, as you approached them, Mr. Floyd was already in that position, right?
Yes.
He was on the ground.
Yes.
And anything that happened prior to that, you wouldn't be privy to or know what happened, right?
Correct.
But you, and so what we saw from your video that has been played was roughly 10 minutes of time, agreed?
Agree.
And throughout the course of your time that you were recording, you would agree that when we watch the video, there are times we can hear your voice, right?
Correct.
And we can hear the voices of the other people, the bystanders, so to speak, right?
Yes.
And I believe that you said there were about 12, by the end, there were about 12 to 14 people that were standing kind of right there on the sidewalk, right?
Correct.
Were you also observing people across the street?
No.
Were you observing people like down on the other side of 38th?
No, mainly focused on what I was seeing.
Right. You would agree that that intersection is a fairly busy intersection, lots of traffic?
Certain days, yes, it could be.
Yeah, I mean at times, right?
Yes.
It's a bus route, there's buses coming by.
It's
right?
been multiple times. It's been empty though, as well. But yeah.
Understood, right? It's a busier intersection. It's in the middle of the city, right? It's compared to like in a neighborhood, like where there's all houses, more traffic there, right?
Yes.
And in fact, in your video, we can actually see a lot of cars driving by because this was, a nice spring night, right?
Yes.
And so, your video, in other words, sort of speaks for itself, right? What we see on it is what you were watching as you watched it.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. You were interviewed by, I believe, a couple of Bureau of Criminal Apprehension agents early on in the case, right?
Who?
The BCA, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. They came and took a statement from you.
Yes.
Okay.
The FBI?
Well, was there an FBI agent? Let's call them law enforcement. All right. There were a couple of law enforcement agents that interviewed you.
Closer to the situation, yes. It was I believe two white guys. I'm not sure if they were white, but they looked white. But yes, closer to the situation, yes.
Right. You met with them, you provided them your cell phone, and you allowed them to copy the video from your cell phone for purposes of their investigation, right?
Yes.
And at that time, they took a statement from you. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And you understand that that statement was recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't want to misphrase what you said before, but I thought I heard you say that you were aware that there were 4 officers on the scene when you walked up.
No. I didn't see the other officers until the end, and when everything blowed up, I've seen different angles. That's when I figured out it was two other officers on George Floyd when he was laying on the ground.
The question being, though, however, as you were filming it, you were not aware that those other 2 officers were there.
No, only officer I seen was CHAUVIN and Officer Tao.
Right. And those are the 2 that you primarily had interactions with Officer Tao, right?
Yes.
And you testified that Officer Chauvin didn't say very much, right?
Yes.
But it's also fair to say that you couldn't necessarily hear whether those other officers were speaking to Mr. Chauvin.
Objection, Your Honor, is assuming facts that are not established.
Overruled. You can answer if you know.
You haven't asked the question again?
I heard him.
Okay.
No, I did not hear the other officers.
Right. And it's also fair to say that when you first started recording, you were one of the few people that were there, right?
I was the first person to record.
Right.
First person, sure.
And by the end of the video, there were more people present,
Yes.
And would you agree that initially when you started recording, you weren't saying much or anything to the officers, right?
I don't remember.
But as time went on and more people showed up, voices became louder. Would you agree with that?
As we understood more what was happening.
I just want to know.
What we seen.
Right.
Is how we reacted.
Right.
Like you said, the video speaks for itself.
Understood, and I appreciate that. So you heard various people calling the officers names, right?
Yes.
And the volume of the people in that were bystanders grew louder over time. Would you agree with that?
Yes. More so as he was becoming more unresponsive.
And more people also started speaking at the same time, right?
Yes.
So we had, you said there were 12 to 14 people.
Around that.
Around that number. I think I counted 12 in the picture.
Okay.
And several of them were speaking. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And several of them were yelling.
Yes.
And they were becoming more and more upset based upon what they saw.
Correct.
Do you remember Officer Tao saying to you, if you can breathe if you can talk?
Yes.
Now, in addition to your initial interview with law enforcement officers, you've also met with the prosecution team a couple of times in preparation for trial, right?
Who would that be?
Well, like Mr. Allison, Mr. Blackwell, Mr. Frank, Mr. Slisher, and a host of others, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you were you grew up in the nearby neighborhood, right?
I'm from here. I grew up near the suburbs.
Okay. But you were at the time living...
At the time, I've been there for years. Yes, correct.
For how many years, did you say?
Maybe, I don't know, 5+.
Okay. And you attended Roosevelt High School at the time?
Yes.
And you testified that you felt safe, walking to the store.
Actually, sorry. At the time of this, I'm not sure if I attended Roosevelt because I was in the process of switching schools.
Okay. I think it was during the pandemic, right? And so everybody kind of had, all of a sudden you had to study from home kind of a thing, right?
I was already at my other school,
okay.
So yes.
You testified that you've walked to Cup Foods hundreds, if not thousands of times.
Correct.
And that you felt safe doing so.
Any time of the night, I would walk there.
Okay. Would you agree that you had previously told members of the prosecution team that at night the neighborhood can be a little bit more dangerous?
Some nights, I mean, wasn't really known for violence like every night or a lot, but I feel like any area has some type of crime from here and there.
Sure, understood. And I'm not trying to disparage the neighborhood, right? I'm just asking what you had told the prosecution before.
Right.
All right. You ultimately ended up posting your video to social media, right?
Correct.
And it went viral?
Correct.
And was that a surprise to you?
Definitely.
Changed your life, right?
Beyond objectives, beyond the scope of practice, bro.
Overruled.
Are you asking me?
Yes, it changed your life.
It has.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Blackwell.
Donella, you had just been asked questions about the safety of your neighborhood at night. On May 25th, when you were you there at Cup Foods at night?
No.
Sun was out, you could see fine.
Correct.
You were also asked whether or not you were aware of what people were across the street from where the officers were, what people were on the other side of 38th Street. Remember Mr. Nelson asking you about that?
Correct.
Did you see anybody from across the street or from 38th Street do anything to either attack or threaten Mr. Chauvin?
No.
And do you think that if somebody came across the street to attack or threaten Mr. Chauvin, you had your camera going, you'd have recorded it?
Correct.
Now he asked some questions about, again, the bystanders who were there, and he talked with you about that, those bystanders. Did you see a single thing that indicated to you that Mr. Chauvin was afraid of you, your little cousin, or a single one of the bystanders?
No.
You were asked about cars on the street. There are cars and cars and cars going. Did you notice, was Mr. Chauvin trying to get out of the way of cars?
No.
You were also asked about what the officers might have been saying to Mr. Chauvin.
Correct.
Remember talking about that?
Yes.
Did you hear any of the officers tell Mr. Chauvin that Mr. Floyd didn't have a pulse? Did you hear him say that even?
No.
You didn't hear him say anything?
No.
And you were also asked questions about how, as the events went on May 25th, how you and others may have gotten louder.
Correct.
Darnell, are you the sort of person who, in response to seeing somebody being potentially harmed on the street, gets louder?
I'm more of I bottle things up. I feel things inside. I have social anxiety, so it's really out of my comfort zone to really be that out person. But, you know, when I seen what I saw, at moments I was loud.
Loud in response to what you saw?
Correct.
Now, Mr. Nelson asked you a few questions about your video going viral and how that's changed your life. Remember that at the end?
Yes.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen how your viewing, experiencing what happened to George Floyd has affected your life?
When I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all black. I have a black father, I have a black brother, I have black friends. And I look at that and I look at how that could have been one of them. It's been nights I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done. He should have.
That's the answer. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you finish your answer, Darnell?
She finished her answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Proceed to your next question.
No, Your Honor, that's my last question. Thank you, Darnell.
Mr. Nelson. All right, thank you. You may step down. You can leave, thank you. All right, next witness for the state is coming. All right. And Mr. Blackwell, if you would.
Thank you. Good morning, Judea.
Good morning.
First of all, would you tell us how old you are?
9.
How old will you be by the end of next week?
10.
And you got a 10th birthday coming up.
Yes.
What grade are you in?
3rd.
Do you have a cousin named Darnella?
Yes.
Do you remember going with her sometime last year in May?
Yeah.
You have to let me finish my question, but do you remember going with her to Cup Foods?
Yes.
And you like going to Cup Foods to buy snacks?
Yes.
Did you go with your cousin Darnella sometime in May of last year to get snacks?
Yeah.
Let me show you what's Exhibit 14. No? No. Just a second. Okay, I'm showing you what's been marked as our exhibit number 13 and asking, can you see the two people
Yes.
in the front of that picture? Can you?
Yeah.
Who are those people?
Me and my cousin.
And which one is you? All right. And so the little one with the word love on her shirt.
Yes.
Now you that day you went into Cup Foods to get your snacks.
Yeah.
And when you came out of the Cup Foods, do you remember what you did next when you came out?
I saw the officer put a knee on the neck on George Floyd.
Okay, now you mentioned someone named George Floyd.
Yes.
Did you know George Floyd before May 25th?
I can't hear it.
Could you say that again? You can't hear?
No.
Okay. Had you ever met George Floyd before
No.
going into Cup Foods that day?
No.
As far as you know, had you ever seen him?
No.
Now, when you came out to where your cousin was and you saw George Floyd, was there a policeman there?
Yes.
Do you remember what the policeman or policemen were doing?
Putting a knee on the neck with George Floyd.
If I showed you a picture of a policeman, why don't I just do that? Exhibit 17. Let me ask you if you recognize the policeman in what's marked as Exhibit 17. Do you recognize this man?
Yes.
Who is he?
I can't remember his name.
Okay. Do you remember what he was doing? How do you know him?
He was putting a knee on the neck with George Floyd.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
No.
Okay. How about him?
Yes.
All right. So is that the person then you saw?
Yes.
So you saw a knee being put on the neck of George Floyd. When was the knee taken? Did you see that the knee was ever taken off of George Floyd's neck?
No.
Were you there when an ambulance came?
Yes.
Tell us what happened after you saw the ambulance come.
Yes. The ambulance had to push him off of him.
And how did that happen? Did they simply come in an ambulance and then go up to push him off, or what happened?
They asked him nicely to get off of him.
And when they asked him nicely to get off of him, what did he do?
He still stayed on him.
And then what happened after he still stayed on him? What did the ambulance people do?
They just had to put him off, get off of him.
Are you able to tell us, having been there on this day and seeing the officer on top of George Floyd, how did you feel about that? How did it affect you?
I was sad and kind of mad.
And tell us, why were you sad and mad?
Because it felt like he was stopping his breathing, and it's kind of like hurting him.
Thank you, Judea. I want to ask you the other question.
Mr. Nelson.
I have no questions for this witness.
Thank you. Judea, you can go. You are excused, so you're done testifying. Thank you.
You're welcome. Your Honor, I believe it's time for a lunch break.
All right. Members of the jury, lunches might not be here until 12:30, but let's shoot for 1:15 to reconvene. So we are in recess until 1:15. Thank you.
Did I miss anything? Hold on. Oh, they didn't cross-examine her? Did they cut for lunch? Because 1:15 is, their time is only 15 minutes. Oh. First Nova's like, no, why would he be? What time zone are they in? He said 1:15. It's 12. It's 1 o'clock there now. New witness, little boy. Yeah. Oops. They say it'll take about a month. It's noon here. I thought they were on Eastern time. Why did I think they were on Eastern time? Oh, alright. So I'm going to shut down for now. I'll be back at 1. Kudos to defense for not cross-examining. Yeah, I don't know why they're putting on little kids. I mean, are you like that desperate that you need little kids? Alright. I will see you guys in an hour. No, if they're on Central Time, I thought they were on Eastern Time. I could have sworn they were on Eastern Time. It's noon there now. Yeah, that's what it is here. Alright, so they're in my time zone. Alright, I'll see you guys in an hour and 10 minutes. This channel in an hour. No, they can't be Eastern. Because I'm Central. And 12 o'clock now. So they have to be Central. Alright. I will see you guys later. I'll see you in an hour. Go have lunch. Lunchtime.